Do you want this out?
Yeah.
Okay. So I was initially signed up to speak today, and after Mother's Day, I decided there was no way I needed to speak. We all needed to see if Rick could do for fathers what he did for mothers. So let the healing begin. No pressure. No
All
pressure.
right. Well, this
Yeah, it was on.
It's still on this.
ding ding ding.
How about
Can you hear anything out the back speaker?
Yes.
Oh, okay, great. Happy Father's Day, everybody. Um, So as Diana mentioned, we're here today to celebrate and appreciate the divine masculine, the loving father presence that's all around us and within us as well. And we're another way to say it is we're here, today we're here to make room for Daddy. Who remembers the TV show back in the 50s?
Of course.
Some people actually do. Make Room for Daddy, later known as the Danny Thomas Show. And you can see the reruns on YouTube. I was appalled because the whole first part of the trailer is him pitching Pall Mall cigarettes. Times have changed. But anyway, the show starred Danny Thomas. And the way the show got its name, there's a whole story behind that. In his real life, with his real family, he was frequently on the road because he was an entertainer. He would go and tell jokes, and I don't know what else he did. Maybe he danced or sang. But then he would come back from these gigs, sometimes arriving late at night. And while he was gone, his wife developed the custom of inviting the kids into the bed. So when he comes in the room, they had to make room for Daddy in the family bed. So that's what they called the show. And of course, his daughter, Marlo, she was the firstborn of 3. And she went on in the 60s to have her own show, That Girl. And she was kind of the emblem of the liberated woman. She didn't just run in to get married, and she had a career. So back then, it was considered leading edge stuff to be on primetime TV. And she wrote a memoir in which she tells the story of one night. This was fairly far along into Danny Thomas's career, so he was well known. He's making good money. They had moved to Beverly Hills. They were living in this splendid mansion. And there at the dinner table, he was kind of mercurial. He had a temper. So he gets into this argument with his wife. And he stands up, he pounds the table, and he says, "I can't live like this anymore." And he storms out of the dining room into the foyer, and he starts tromping up the steps. And then he stops at the landing, and he takes a look around at the beautiful paintings on the wall, the gorgeous railing going up the stairwell, the beautiful chandelier in the foyer. And he just stops, and he starts laughing and laughing and laughing at what he just heard himself say until he drops to the floor and starts crying. He was laughing so hard. So I think her book says something like that, something about laughter, the joy of laughing, or it's all about laughter. So he brought a lot of laughter into their lives and into the lives of so many people who saw him perform. And that's the mark of a good dad. I'd say I'm going to do 4 qualities here that I think identify fatherhood at its best. One of them is having a sense of humor. That's what allows us to sort of step outside ourselves and look back at ourselves and see ourselves in perspective. And you could also say that's a form of humility too, because we don't take ourselves too seriously. And after all, don't you think that God has a sense of humor?
I hope so.
Wouldn't you think so?
I know so, yes, I know.
I mean, think of the creatures that God has created, the duck-billed platypus. And there's this weird bird in Africa, a hornbilled something, But the bill is like, it's a third as big as the animal, the rest of the animal, and it's just walking around like that. And camels, they say camels, the only animal that must have been put together by a committee. And last but not least, there's us. Aren't we a sketch sometimes? Like he was on the stairwell. I can't live like this. So as you may know, I teach a lot of Qigong, and that comes from the Taoist tradition in China. And they identify 5 basic elements in nature. They talk about water and wood, earth, fire, and metal. So the metal element is associated with father-like qualities. So that's identified as like the ideal father because it's associated with strength and decisiveness, as well as incisiveness. And the symbol for the metal is an axe. So of course an axe is used to cut. You can say cut through the crap. Cut to the chase. Get to the point. Get to the heart of the matter. That's what the axe does, and that's what Father Yang energy does at its best. It cuts through. So it's very linear, but it's very useful in certain situations. And of course, it shows up in everybody, all humans, but the ratio of it is higher typically in men. So first focusing on the decisive quality. In order to act decisively, hopefully we have some kind of vision. We're not just like reaching into a hat and pulling something out, but we have at least, we don't have to have the whole path visualized before us, but at least the next step or the next half step we see clearly and we know at a deep level from the inside out what that plan or that vision is. So clarity of vision would be another trait that I want to lift up in the ideal father or the ideal male yang energy, clarity of vision. There's a Mayan parable that says the maternal instinct is to hold the child close to her heart. And the paternal instinct is to take that child and lift the child up so it can see the world. So you
My
have
brother
the,
used to do that. He kind of
Oh, really?
throw me up. He was out there.
Did you have low ceilings? I don't.
It was fun.
Yeah, right. Little kids like that.
Yeah,
Mothers are looking on sometimes.
yeah, I was wondering why dads do that a lot. They'll
Oh, there you
go up, yeah, they'll do
In,
that.
innate, apparently. I also think of Robert Kennedy from the 60s, that famous quote, which I'll paraphrase, something like, most people, when they hear about a new idea, they ask why. But when I dream and get an idea, I ask why not. So he was a leader, he was a man with vision. And he wanted to take us somewhere, but unfortunately that was cut short. I also think of back in seminary, one of my roommates, Dan Little, his father used to be the minister of the Presbyterian Church in Ithaca. And Dan Jr., won a scholarship to go study somewhere overseas. And his father's reaction was, great, go for it! And his mother said, is it safe? So you can see the different perspectives there too. So the metal axe, kind of a symbol there. You could also say the sword related, they both have sharp edges. So another symbol might be the sword, and the sword could stand in as a symbol of protection. I remember back when I was studying Aikido, and one day it was sword practice time, so they told us to take this bamboo stick and to get centered here. And one person had to stand like this, and the partner had their bamboo stick, and they had, with all their might, they had to wallop the stick of the person who was holding it. And, usually you lose it. But a couple times I was so focused and so centered, he hit as hard as he could, and it just went, and it stayed. So that idea of centering and having the sword, we're grounded and we're protected from the blows of life. So it's interesting because elsewhere in Scripture, Jesus Jesus says, "Do not suppose that I come to bring peace to the earth. I come not to bring peace, but a sword." A sword? How can the Prince of Peace be bearing a sword? So of course he wasn't speaking of a literal sword, he was speaking of a figurative sword. And that sword of which Jesus speaks is a symbol of a spiritual process of pruning. So it might be helpful to think of it in more psychological terms, where he comes, and the purpose of the sword is to prune our ego. And of course, we can either be like playing too small, which would be I'm not enough. The theme being not enough. In which case, the idea is to fill in that valley, bring it up to appreciate our rightful place as children of God. Or going the other extreme, full of ourselves, arrogant, aggressive, and so much of our culture today is that kind of masculinity where it's hyper masculine. I get my alumni magazine, and they had this whole story on this young woman who was the captain of her rugby team, and she was the quarterback, half fly, I think is what they call the position in rugby. So she was like the field general. She'd be barking out orders, and she came down with meningitis, which you don't come down with that unless your immune system is compromised. And she was such a pusher, such a driver, she didn't know how to let off the gas. And so she overdid it, became vulnerable, and caught this meningitis and almost killed her. But then, her toughness, she used her rugby training to overcome the bacteria, and she made a full recovery. But it's that hyper masculine is in everywhere, and we're all influenced by it. But that's a state of imbalance. That's not balance. So the purpose of pruning a tree is to cut off some of the dead wood, cut off some of the. Valerie's son just took a course on how to prune apple trees, and I was like, oh my God, he's cutting down all the branches. Not all the branches, but there's a method by which you know where to go, where to cut, and it actually improves the health of the tree. The energy of the tree is then focused on the fruit that remains, and you get a bumper crop on whatever is left. So if and when we choose to follow the teachings of Jesus, the modeling of how he lived, we're going to be subject to that sword that comes to prune and show us where we're off the mark, that's the literal meaning of sin. It's an archery term from the Greek. It means to miss the mark. It's not a comment on the morality of what is missed. It's just saying, well, you're off target. So this idea of becoming disciples is to bring us back on the path and improve our inner peace, our relationship with ourselves, as well as the quality of our relationship with each other, our neighbor, and of course the quality of our relationship with the Creator, the Source. So we have the sense of humor. There's the clarity of vision. And then there's this element of protection, this protective, using the sword protectively. And sometimes that means pruning to improve the well-being. And then the fourth quality I want to highlight is intimacy. And again, that kind of runs counter to the popular culture idea of masculinity, which is hyper, you don't be vulnerable or intimate, you stand alone like this tall oak, So, apparently Jesus did not speak in Greek, which is the language that the New Testament is written in. He used Aramaic. And the Aramaic word for father is...
Abba.
Yes, it's Abba. It's not the Swedish singing group. Maybe that's where they got the idea.
Yeah.
And a lot of commentators, there was I think it was German, Joachim, somebody or other, from the 1920s, wrote about this word Abba, and he suggested that it described the nature and the quality of Jesus' relationship to God, which was very intimate. And other people came along after that and said, oh, yes, it's right. So it must mean daddy, like a little 3-year-old, how a 3-year-old might address their father as daddy. But other commentators came along and said, no, we can't say daddy, it doesn't really mean daddy. But it does mean father, it means my father. And certainly elsewhere in the scriptures, there is a picture painted of a very intimate relationship between Jesus and God the Father. There in John 17, he's praying one of the last prayers of his life. He's in the Garden of Gethsemane. He knows what's coming in the morning. So he gets down, he prays that prayer that he prayed so intently, he said that he began to sweat blood. And in the prayer he says, Holy Father, keep through your name those whom you have given me, that they may be one as we are. And he goes on, that they all may be one as you, Father, are in me, and I am in you, that they may also be one in us. So you get that theme of oneness. And that has to do with the peace that Jesus does come to bring with the help of the sword. And it's designed to bring us to a place of peace within ourselves. So we come to peace with us, we make peace with ourselves, we make peace with our neighbor, and we make peace with our world. So now, cut over to professional development class at BOCES, where I teach information literacy. And we're watching this movie called Paper Lion, the documentary. And they went to a school in eastern Washington state, where it was a school for troubled kids, so alternative education. They've been kicked out of typical general ed classrooms, and they all have huge things going on in their life, which is why they're there in a special setting. And they profiled, I think, about 4 or 5, but I'll just talk about this one student, call him Tyler. He had no mother, his mother was dead or gone, out of the picture. He didn't even have a house, a roof over his head, so he was just sleeping on couches at various friends' houses. And he's into drugs, missing a lot of school. And then they transfer him to this school called Lincoln Alternative Ed. And so the ratio of students to teachers is much lower, and the teachers have been trained to be aware of the effects of trauma. There's this, I don't know if you've heard, but there's this whole movement now, we're having it at BOCES, all the local districts, where it's called ACE, Adverse Childhood Experiences. So that could run the gamut from a parent leaves through divorce or death, physical abuse or neglect, a whole bunch of different, there's like 10 or 12 indicators, and that directly affects their performance in school, of course, and their ability to socialize appropriately. So this kid makes a huge turnaround because the teachers are there for him. They go the extra mile. They'll spend time helping students outside of the classroom. And they get to the fall semester of his senior year, and he has progressed because he's got some gray matter, he's got some ability. So he's progressed to the point where he decides he wants to go to a 4-year college, and he applies, and then you see he gets his letter of acceptance. But that's when the caca really hits the fan, because it's like, now he really is going to have to go outside his comfort zone, because he has no family support. He has no real record of success outside of maybe the last 2 or 3 years in high school. So his foundation is a little bit flimsy. And sure enough, in the spring semester of his senior year, he starts not showing up for school. He's absent. He's now failing 2 classes. So his science teacher, this big bear of a man, he's big and gruff and he's long mutton chop sideburns and big walrus mustache. And you see the camera zooms in on a text exchange between the science teacher and the student. And so the teacher is asking, we haven't seen you in school for a while, what's going on? And the student texts back, and he's full of profanity, I'm not F-bomb coming back to this F-bomb school, you can go F-bomb yourselves. And the teacher says, Tyler, I'm sorry you're upset. What's going on? What's the matter? And he keeps engaging and interacting and responding in this kind of that-centered, anything you do to whack my sword is not going to move, and I'm just here unconditionally for you. And so he says, leave me the F-bomb alone, and teacher, I care about you, come back to school, I love you, man. And so lo and behold, the next day he does come back and he apologizes for the tirade. And he apparently turned a corner because he went on, he made up the work, passed the courses, graduated from college, and they take this weekend where they go off to a camp, and he's standing at the bonfire at night, and he's telling his story, and he says, yeah, if I can do this, any of you can do this, all of you can do this, because he really went to the edge of not doing it, but he caught himself and he came back. So then they show him, he goes off to college, and the 2 teachers actually went, because he didn't have parents, moved him in, got him all set up, and then it says, and now he wants to be a teacher. So the next day is another school day. I go to school, and I walk into the classroom and I see Lennox, who I've known him since he was, yay high, and he's a really sweet kid. He's smart, and apparently something's going on. Maybe now that he's a teenager, he's got hormones that are raging or whatever. But something's going on, because he sees me. I smile at him in greeting, and he says, "Get the F-bomb out of here." And this is something I struggle with. It's like, I'm not naturally really super extroverted, but I try to be more extroverted than I naturally am, and I open to the kids. And it's not easy when they come back at you and stuff like that. Here I am, I'm back in the gym, and they're smacking the sword. So more than once, more than I care to admit, I get my dander up. I can feel like and I try to respond appropriately, but I'm sure on some level they can see that they got my goat. And but this time, maybe it was because I just seen this film and the way that the teachers were modeling how to respond to keep the center. Instead of like going out, I went in and I became aware of the space around my heart, and I felt this kind of openness and softness and kind of a feeling of joy or a feeling of love, because that's how I initially connected. This kid is so sweet. And I just went back to that memory, I guess, and I felt the love of that, of his soft heart. And so he just told me to get the F out, and I said, well, good morning, Lennox. It's so good to see you. And I thought I had that internal feeling experience, and then next thing I know, he says, good morning, Mr. Gridley. So I did not escalate. I like went in and I actually softened, and then that's what showed up over there in him.
Yeah.
Go figure. It really works. But I have to say, it wasn't something I thought through. It just went there and happened. So sometimes you eat the bear and sometimes the bear eats you. Nobody's going to have a bat 1,000% all the time. But so these are the qualities: the sense of humor, the clarity of vision, and that centeredness that holds the sword that protects us from ourselves. Because sometimes we're a little too cocksure for our own good. Prune that branch, and that sense of intimacy. Jesus certainly had it. He felt the oneness. There was no separation, and we're invited to pursue that and to receive that and open to that and experience those qualities in ourselves. And it really reminds me of our benediction that we speak at the end of each service, how the light of God surrounds us, the love of God enfolds us, the power of God protects us, and the presence of God is watching over us, even as it watched over the little fawn on the parkway. So all of us are sons and daughters of this intimate, this loving, this powerful, living presence of God the Father, divine masculine. So that's Jesus God, and that's our God too, if we choose to make room for Daddy. So with that, any comments or questions?
I don't know if you want to do anything similar like you did with Mother's Day. If we have any stories that we want to share about our dads.
Yeah, is there anything you'd
If we
like
do
to
that,
share?
let's make sure that let's turn the camera off. So that because not everyone here is given permission to be videotaped, and people will be more free to speak if they know they're not being recorded.
Yes, that's
That makes
correct.
sense. That's a great
Okay, and
Well, we had it on.
Unless they want.
I know, but that's because I didn't think.
Well, if
didn't
somebody
occur to
wants
me.
to give permission, if they don't want to, then I'll turn it off for them. And
No,
others
that would single people out.
We
Mother
have
Day
to
travels into the West Coast. But now I'm back with my other family. So let's join me please in our call to worship as printed in the bulletin. Oh, but first let's just take a breath. And then say it like you mean it. There is but one presence and one power in the universe and in my life. God the good, omnipotent. And let's start with some music.
All right. I choose love.
Oh no, I choose love. I guess we
Good
can all
choice.
choose love.
Good choice. Peace in my life is growing because I choose love. Love's always present, it's what I'm made of. I choose love. We are a part of each other. We are one tie that binds us, that can't be undone. I choose love. Peace in my family is growing because I choose love. Let love be present, it's what we're made of. I choose love. We are a part of each other. We are one loving family, sharing one son. I choose love. Peaceful land is growing because I choose love. Let love be present, it's what we're made of. I choose love. We are one of each other. We are one choice unites us. Let this be the one. I choose love. I choose love. I choose
I love that song.
That's a great song, I love that song.
So it's time for our announcements, and I would like to start by saying Happy Father's Day
Well, thank you.
to the men and women, the divine masculine within us all. Happy
Yeah.
Dad's Day.
Happy Father's Day.
And there's a leak in the basement. Like there's a hole in the bucket, right? You know that song?
Yeah.
You know that song? Okay.
Can you fall on Dad? Could be a leak.
I don't know, there's a leak in my house too, so, like, there's leaks all over
I
the
saw
place.
it, there's very little, there's none.
Yeah, they just said be careful,
Yep,
make
just
sure
not
that,
to go in that one door, go in the door
Yeah,
through the kitchen.
yeah. So,
Really? That's
it
the first time I've
appears
seen
that there were no announcements about today being the third Sunday of the month, and it's potluck day. Vera sent me a note the other day, I think it's potluck day, is it? And I said, no, it's just the second Sunday of the month. So clearly, my travels like really got me going.
I don't know. Maybe
But
that
I
was
understand
stuff
there are people who've been cooking all day, and, you know,
There's food.
we'll have a fishes and loaves moment, I
Yes.
guess. So, potluck fellowship downstairs. It is the third Sunday. Surprise!
So,
Next week, we have Valerie Zeal speaking. And the week after that, Jody Kessler is coming. And I don't know if there are any additional announcements. Jim?
As of this morning, I learned that Father's Day was created by a woman.
Sure, women are in charge of those things.
It was like turn of the century, and it took until Richard Nixon to make it official.
Tricky Dick did something right.
Well, the Happy Father's Day to everybody.
Are there any other announcements? Okay, then please join me as we not only welcome new people. I've been gone for a while, so your face is new to me, but I don't know if you've been here the last 4 weeks and I just didn't know.
Oh, this is my first time here.
Oh,
My name is
welcome.
Betsy. And
Hi,
I came with
Betsy.
Vera
Hey,
and
glad
Carol.
you're here.
Vera, Carol, Betsy, thank you for being here. Let's join with me, please, in our new member welcome as printed in the bulletin. We open our hearts and doors to new individuals and families. We know that the right and perfect people are joining us at the right and perfect time. Amen. And so it is. Now we have a time to greet your neighbor. We keep this relatively brief as there will be time, of course, especially today for fellowship after the service. And I'm going to say a really quick hello to everyone and then hit the ladies and I'll be back. So you all greet each other.
Talk amongst yourself.
Talk amongst yourself.
So do you
So
like this?
we come now to the time in our service when we share our special
Is it
unity
also from
moments
the
that
top?
people may have experienced over the last week or whenever. This is where you feel the synchronicity of God at work in your life, the universe making way for you, and that sort of thing. Would anyone like to share a special unity moment today?
I have two, actually.
Okay.
One was last weekend. I went out to Akron, Ohio for Founder's Day of Alcoholics Anonymous. And part of the weekend was
Did you say Founders Day?
Founder's Day.
Okay, at first I thought you said
Okay.
Father's Day.
No,
and then I was
Founder's
like,
Day.
I know.
Father's Day
It
for
was
us.
1935 that the
Right.
two founders of Alcoholics Anonymous got together
Right.
in Akron, so they have a celebration every year.
Athens, what state?
Akron, Ohio.
Oh, Akron.
So there's 9,100 alcoholics out there for one.
Wow.
Yeah, hell of a party.
Oh,
If we don't drink, doesn't mean we can't party. And,
Great.
but the thing that really struck me was
9,100.
part of the trip was visiting Dr. Bob Smith's house, who was one of the founders. It's where initially, before they had meeting places and everything, they take drinks in, give them a place to stay for a couple of weeks to sober up, and introduce them to the program. And while we're at Dr. Bob's house, there's things laid out the way it was when they were living there, including his books. There was a whole lot of New Thought books and at least a dozen Unity books laid out, and I thought that was pretty neat. Thought I'd share that. And the second thing I'd like to share is driving around this week, I flipped through the radio and I hit a Christian Satellite Network with Dr. J. Vernon McGee. Although he's very fundamental in his teachings, I listened to him for a little while, and he was talking about the second coming of Christ, you know, and he pictured this big battle between evil and good and all this other stuff, but Christ was going to come again. The important thing I got out of the message, though, is there's 3 Greek words for the word coming. And the third one, which is used in this context of the coming of Christ, was presence. And it seemed to me, listening to him, he had the key, but he didn't know which door it belonged to. I thought I'd share that.
Oh, that's nice. I like that. I like that a lot. Anybody else have any unity moments they'd like to share? Vera.
Thank you.
Well, today, while we were driving in, I was driving Carol and Betsy on the road, the highway, I call it a highway, 434.
Highway.
As we're driving there, all of a sudden in front of me in the middle of the road is a young deer. And I rarely see a deer on 434. I've never. And there it was, and I started beeping and beeping, and it noticed somehow, and it ran off the road and kept running and running, and I was hoping he wouldn't get scared and go back in the road, which he didn't. So I was like praying and beeping, and then he went into the woods nicely. There's like a wooded area near the bridge there. So he was okay, but it was like a little,
Did antlers?
no
Then it would
antlers.
be a sheep.
It's not a young, but it looked very young. It looked like
Oh,
a young
okay.
deer.
Okay.
It
right,
looked
right.
like a young deer, so I'm just grateful that with, some kind of presence and prayer and that this deer was okay.
That's good.
On the way to church, I would have hated to,
Yeah.
and on Father's Day, so.
Well, and it's really beautiful because there's this awareness, that brings awareness to our mundane moments, that we can't just take for granted that things are going to go smoothly every step of the way, that we have to be aware and be on the lookout for the young deer. cross
It's
the
also
mission.
covered dish day, so.
Say again.
I said it's also covered dish day, so.
Before this is-
You don't understand, never mind, okay.
So, but I think, the Spirit, Holy Spirit was helping this little deer in this moment. So it's.
And always, right? The presence of God
Always.
protects the deer as well.
Right, the
Always.
deer
Yeah,
as well.
absolutely. Anyone else? Unity moments? All right, then let's have our blessing of prayer requests. We have our box of prayers. Anyone who wants to put a special prayer in there can do so. It goes in the box and then it gets sent up to Silent Unity where it's prayed upon for 24/7 for 30 days. Beautiful thing. And we bless every week the prayers in the box and any other prayer requests we might have. So if you will share with me, I've printed in the bulletin, God's all-encompassing love is doing its perfect work in and through us. Wholeness is established in every area of our lives, and so it is. So the daily word today, the blessing for fathers, Sunday, June 16. I honor all father figures in my prayers. Today is an opportunity to recognize and honor the fatherly influences in my life, whether their role is a parent, mentor, teacher, or coach. Their encouragement and guidance give me the gift of believing in myself. My prayers also include fathers and stepfathers who are new to the role, learning the importance, dedication, and patience it takes. I bless the role models who are helping to build life skills and live by example. Whether changing a diaper, telling a story, attending school functions, or teaching how to ride a bike, at the heart of all that matters is love. God's presence is active in their lives. I pray they live in this awareness and enjoy the experience of watching children discover who they are and what they are capable of achieving. From Isaiah 41:10, I will strengthen you, I will help you, I will uphold you. And let us take a moment in prayer and meditation. Close our eyes, sink down into the silence and the wisdom where we can listen. Seek to achieve that awareness, to reflect upon not only the guidance and fatherly love we have received from others, be they men or women, but also the ways in which we provide guidance and fatherly love to others, children and adults. We take a moment and sink into the silence for reflection. We come back to our awareness, full love and gratitude to be here in this moment. Amen.
It's called Every Cell of Me. Father's Day. So that's why I was distracted.
Mm.
Okay, but he was a beautiful man. You are the bright moon, you are the golden sun, you are the changing colors of the sky. You are the magic that makes the plants grow from seeds, and the magic that makes birds fly. You are water and fire and air and earth. You are the miracle of birth. Mother Earth by the sky. You are the powerful energy inside every cell of me. You are the water that I drink. You are the stones in the creek. You are the cool, gentle breeze. You are the sweet apple trees. You are the fire that I feed. You are the air that I breathe. You are the great mystery. You are the spirit inside me. Mother Earth by the sky. You are the powerful energy inside every cell of me. Mother Earth by the sky. You are the powerful energy inside every cell of me. Inside every cell of me.
That's a beautiful tribute to your dad.
Yes, his name was Richard.
Thank you, Mia.
In this moment, in this place, I remember who I am, letting fear and worry fall away from me. I open my eyes and see there is only love. There is only love. Love that heals, love that sets us free. There is only love. When I lose myself
Very nice.
Now, if you will all come and